In Space Marine 2, there are two simple goals: kill anything that moves, and stay alive. While every class is a highly tuned killing machine, no class is quite as adept at keeping both themselves and their team alive than the Bulwark. In this video, we'll showcase a max level, max difficulty build that'll be welcomed in any squad and primed for any challenge. My name is Kodiak, this is Legacy Gaming, and it's time to put up our shields and get to work. With their class ability, the Chapter Banner, the Bulwark can provide armor, generate contested health, and buff damage or defenses for the entire team. If that isn't already enough, they can also become a near immovable object that creates death zones for hordes of enemies. This makes them exceptionally strong at defending objectives and creating choke points that funnel enemies into extinction. The Bulwark is extremely limited in weapon variety. In fact, they don't even have a primary weapon, but with this day 1 build, they more than make up for that by controlling space with deadly shock zones that debuff and damage enemies, while also creating space with constant shield bashes that interrupt and knock down swaths of enemies. Simple on the surface, but capable of hard carrying with the right pilot, the Bulwark is almost unstoppable. And with that, let's get into the build. Before any perks are selected, the Bulwark comes with an innate 20% health boost, one of the many reasons they are a more durable class than any other. Next, perk choices. First, we have a couple good options in column 1. Conviction is great because you'll lose less health when your armor is shredded, if only for 5 seconds. Since you can get your armor back quicker than most, it's definitely noticeable. Forward momentum is also great if you shield bash a lot. We don't recommend taking Intimidating Aura because it actually disables gun strikes as a perfect parry. We believe this is a bug due to no indication saying otherwise, so for this build, we'll go with Conviction. Our defense consists of parrying between knockdowns with shield bash, so the extra damage starts to add up on trash mobs, especially in conjunction with our next two choices. In column 2, Shock and Awe is the first part of creating a death zone. Enemies inside a shock area take 25% more damage. Not only are we going to use shock grenades as much as we can, we have other abilities that automatically spawn a shock effect at our location for free. This is an important part of our build because we want to have shock areas up as much as possible, and it all adds up. For column 3, we're taking defensive advantage. On a very short cooldown, scoring a perfect parry will spawn a shock area at your location. Combined with the previous perk Shock and Awe, you can quickly see how the area control build is already coming together. The two other choices are actually quite useful, and you may want to consider them when fighting a large amount of ranged enemies, but having near unlimited access to free shock area effect is really hard to pass up. For your team perk, all three options are solid, though Effective Formation is the most specialized and the one you'll likely use least. Unyielding Ceramite is excellent, especially when combined with perks that reduce the cooldown on armor regen delay. For this build, however, we take Advanced Conditioning because it allows allies to heal from their wounds faster and also combines with another perk which we'll be picking up down the line. Moving into gear perks, we pick Focus Strength in column 5. The reason for this is because when you shield bash weaker enemies, they actually get knocked over. This creates a ton of space and downtime, allowing you to melee, reposition, plant your Chapter Banner, or just shoot. In column 6, it's the Invigorating Icon. Planting your Chapter Banner provides full contested health for all allies, which means if they quickly perform an execution soon after the banner is up, they'll fully heal all missing health. It'll take some coordination, but this is also why we picked up Advanced Conditioning back in column 3. When you see an ally low on health, look for an execution opportunity. Plant your flag and let them take the execution. In a scenario with multiple executions, everyone eats. Your final gear perk in column 7 has two real choices. You simply need to make a decision between buffing allied defense or offense while they are in proximity of your Chapter Banner. For this build, we take Glory Shield because we are here to keep the squad alive. But when you're playing with a more seasoned team, pick up Inspiration for the damage. For our signature pick, we're taking Emergency Countermeasure. This spawns a full duration shock grenade effect when armor is removed. With a short 120-second timer, it makes for quite a frequent occurrence. When it activates, even just stopping and blocking will let you get your bearings while the damage chips away at enemies. You can even use a shield bash to knock down lesser enemies and get some breathing room as they flail helplessly. Just keep an eye out for any ranged and/or unblockable attacks. With this setup, the Bulwark can turn choke points into deadly hazards by level 3, gain additional shock spawns at level 9, and become a fully operational battle station at 21 once your shield bash knockdown comes into play. At 22, you grant life, but you'll be taking it far sooner. Next up, weapon choices. Since the Bulwark can't carry a primary weapon, we skip right to the secondary. For our choice, we select the plasma pistol mostly because of its versatility. Our variant is the Ophelian Liberation with additional magazine capacity because full charge shots take a chunk of ammo. The pistol deals solid damage, but more importantly, the charge shot works great as a long-range interrupt on sentries calling for backup. For the perk tree, here's our setup. The path is pretty simple. We mostly stay in the bottom row and pick up a few sweeteners on top. First, we take fast venting for the cooling. Bulwark has a lot of time when they block or shield bash, so we aren't too worried about reduced heat. We'd rather it be fully ready when we are ready to start blasting. Next, we take Rampage and Supercharged Shot simply because they are in the way of where we want to go. Both are solid, but our goal is to get to Artificer tier ASAP. Great Might is next, and though we don't see that many Terminus level enemies, having a 20% combined damage boost on our charge shot against bosses will make a considerable impact. Our 5th perk is Plasma Collection because we need more ammo. 20% is nothing to scoff at, and combined with our 6th perk, Efficient Charge, we'll have a noticeable amount of additional ammo available at any one time. The plasma pistol is still costly to shoot, so use it sparingly, but when it comes time to start shooting, you'll be glad you have the ammo. For our 7th perk, we take Perpetual Velocity. This helps a ton for sentry interrupts and also makes it easier to fully charge a shot post Perfect Parry or Gunstrike, which is a brutal combination. Finally, we have a choice. You can go with Blast Radius for a slightly bigger AoE on your charge shot, but we take Retaliation because a perfect dodge into Gunstrike into a fully charged plasma to the face is absolutely devastating. The Bulwark's melee weapon choices are all excellent. You can make some great builds with Chainsword and Power Fist, but for this build, we'll go with the tried and true Power Sword, a dual mode weapon that lets you switch between focus damage and wider swinging arcs. Our variant will be the Imperator Blade because it has high damage while still maintaining respectable speed and cleave potential. It's a balanced defense type, so your parries will need to be more cleanly timed to spawn the shock area effect via defensive action. But the damage and the cleave is what we want after knocking down enemies with Shield Bash. If you have trouble with Perfect Parry, feel free to switch to Gathalamor Crusade, which is a fencing type. It's faster overall, but you trade some cleave potential for the larger parry window. It really is up to you, both are excellent. The Power Sword perks are mostly straightforward. We aren't doing anything too fancy, and there is some room for variety depending on how you play, but for this build, here's our setup. We start off with Armored Strength because the Bulwark is pretty good at maintaining armor, but more importantly, we want the damage from the 2nd perk, Master of Offense. Switching weapons will grant you 20% more melee damage for 5 seconds on a 10-second cooldown. This works great after shield bashing a bunch of scrub enemies to the ground inside one of your deadly shock zones. Swap modes, chop them up, problem solved. Next are 2 Perpetual Strength perks to add 10% more total melee damage. Not much to be said, other than more damage is more damage. For our 5th perk, we take Tranquility. This makes your Power Whirl uninterruptible. It's performed by doing a melee attack, pausing a split second, then pressing melee again to do a leaping AoE. It's a bit slow, so you'll need to pick your spots. Slashing Blade adds an extra attack onto our basic Power Stance combo. Since we're out to cleave as many enemies as we can while in Power Stance, this is an easy pickup. Tyrannid Slayer and Chaos Slayer come next since we are headed towards the top row. A bit of extra damage against both Tyrannid and Chaos enemies is always nice. From here we take Hard Target. It works well since we'll be chopping away with light attacks, and this gives us a little extra defense because everything helps. Reeling Blow is on the path to Majora's Slayer, which is really what we're after. The debuff is nice, but ideally we try not to get hit altogether. The 10% melee buff with Majora's Slayer helps when trying to clean up the battlefield without using excess ammo. Finally, let's talk about how to actually play the Bulwark and this build. Their core playstyle is relatively simple. Create and own choke points, grant contested health to allies before they execute to refill, and hold your ground as much as you can. This build is all about spawning the shock effects, so we want to lean into that. Your first perfect parry will spawn a short shock effect. You'll want to be mindful about when you parry, otherwise you'll spawn it when you don't need it, and then it's on a cooldown. Luckily, the cooldown is short, but just be aware. You'll also want to be looking for choke points. This could be hallways, tight corners, bridges, anything that's going to create a funnel. Get in there, perfect parry, then back up slightly so that enemies can move into the shock area. You'll want to move back just a little bit when the shock spawns, be it from your perfect parry or even defensive countermeasures. More room for enemies to kill themselves in. One final reminder is to always search out shock grenades. Since shock areas are your bread and butter, they often serve you better than frags, cracks, or meltas. You don't need them per se, but they complement your overall arsenal, and you can add another defensive hurdle to your death funnels. Immovable, unshakable, unkillable, the Bulwark is ready for war. As the shield-bearing tanks of Space Marine 2, the Bulwark makes the most out of their limited arsenal by dictating the rules of battle. After playing over 300 hours of preview and early access, we are confident that our Day 1 Bulwark build will stand up to anything the opposition throws at you. Our team has worked tirelessly to bring you Day 1 builds of every class, so if you like our work and you want to support the channel, do me a solid, hit that thumbs up, and consider subscribing. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.